Hi, and welcome to Rontime. Today is the 20th of December, 2013. Here we are at the end of another year, my first year on TV since college. And I'd like to thank the people who've made it possible here at Access Tucson for me to have a great show. I'm getting a lot of feedback from people that indicate that the questions that I ask are worth consideration, especially in terms of legalizing cannabis and hemp for commercial crops in the United States, for oil independence, energy independence, and to become a net exporter of energy. The oil companies would have you be really, really proud of the fact that we now produce 50% of the oil in the United States that we consume in the United States. And while that's quite a milestone, when you stop to think that we started this whole mess and we used to be the exporter of oil on Earth, you look back at that history of the oil boom and the corporations that were involved in it, the special favors that they got from the Congress at the time. And you look today, they're still getting special favors from the Congress. And I'm sure their lobbyists are well worth all the hundreds of millions of dollars they spend in order to get tax credits worth billions of dollars. It's interesting that the largest single most profitable corporation in the history of American business didn't pay any taxes in their most profitable year because they had all these offsetting grants and favors from the Congress to make sure that oil companies stay in the position of power that they're in so they can give a lot of money to the election committees and get their candidates elected. So I'd really like to suggest that it's maybe time for people to buy company stock in these oil companies like ExxonMobil, Shell, etc., and go to their board meetings as a shareholder, go to the shareholder meetings, and insist that the corporations move forward towards a sustainable economy and a sustainable supply of oil, since we seem to continue to burn it. The improved mileage standards for automobiles will make an enormous difference. There are other European manufacturers who already get the kind of numbers that we're projecting to have American car manufacturers meet in a few years. But that was a huge step, and I congratulate the president and the Congress for having the intuition to move forward on requiring higher standards for energy efficiency. Buildings actually consume 40% of the energy that's used in the United States. And while green building codes and requirements for energy efficiency have moved considerably in that industry, it takes a long time to do all the houses in America that need retrofitting. And interestingly enough, we have an Arizona Corporation Commission and a couple of utilities that are going to charge you a surcharge if you manufacture solar energy from photovoltaic panels on your roof on your property. Because apparently you were supposed to be buying power from them all along and not going out and doing your own independent solar systems so that you had energy that you made at home and used at home. So, but then again, this is Arizona. It should be the solar capital of the universe, but it's not, because up in Phoenix, there's a legislature that cares more about their own personal greed and their own personal financial gain than they do about the sustainability of the state of Arizona. You can see that in how much they spend on education and what they spend on child protective custody services, etc. It's backwards, and it'll probably stay backwards for not the rest of my life, but part of my life. As I'm growing older and mellowing a little bit, I'm realizing that even though I have a lot of radical ideas and I push for radical solutions, there have been positive changes that have taken place that need to be celebrated and understood. For instance, the death of Nelson Mandela, the man who essentially ended apartheid with the help of an entire country who believed in him and believed that the sanctions were working as intended to cripple the white Praetorian government, which refused to allow black people to vote. Interestingly enough, the black people in America got the vote 150 years ago after the Emancipation Proclamation. But women in this country were not allowed to vote until 1919. So half the population wasn't allowed to participate in the process of democracy. Another thing that we need to celebrate in Nelson Mandela's life is that he had the wisdom to create truth and reconciliation councils where people could actually face the people that persecuted them and treated them as second-class citizens, and to hear them apologize in court. I think a truth and reconciliation court in the United States would be an ideal way to forgive all of the prisoners we made out of people who consumed cannabis. Having finally realized, as other countries around the world are legalizing it for personal use without restriction, that the creation of a Class 1 narcotic in 1937 by the use of a fraudulent artifice before Congress, when Harry J. Anslinger lied and said that it made white women desire to have sex with black men, and that demonic music, jazz and swing, hypnotized perfectly safe, good living Christian white people to want to have sex with black men and entertainers. He also said that. I think he also included Puerto Ricans and Filipinos. Don't ask me why, but New York State responded with a law allowing cannabis, outlawing cannabis, and allowing you to be jailed for possession of a simple small amount of it, even less than an ounce. Policies are changing in cities across our nation as the burden of prosecuting and jailing these people who consume cannabis, and I believe at the last count, the Gallup poll put 52% of Americans in favor of legalization and total decriminalization. So the tide has swung, but the government has not. So again, I'm going to appeal to the President of the United States and the Attorney General to review the war on drugs, change their policy, and to actually get in line with the rest of the world and the attitudes that they have towards cannabis. It's especially important in light of the fact that scientific studies, medical studies, proved that cannabis kills all 3 forms of breast cancer in the human body, on direct contact, in the bloodstream, without collateral damage, and without all the pain and suffering that goes along with our current cancer regimes of radiation and chemotherapy, to extremely toxic ways to kill cancer, but very, very devastating to the body in the process. So on behalf of all the women who died of breast cancer between 1937 and whenever the president finally signs the Harry Anslinger Proclamation legalizing cannabis and hemp in the United States, someone owes an apology. Someone owes a truth and reconciliation to those women, because the DEA has suppressed evidence that proved years and years ago in medical studies that cannabinoid oils kill breast cancer on contact in the human bloodstream without collateral damage. And why would the DEA need to suppress a study that proves that a natural organic herb kills 3 different forms of breast cancer without collateral damage? There must be some relationship between the DEA, who suppressed these medical studies, and the pharmaceutical companies, the police and prison guards unions, all of these lobbying firms and all of these organizations that want to keep the game of cops and robbers, easy pot busts in place so that they don't have to do real law enforcement and they don't have to work on real crimes like crack cocaine or some of the synthetic drugs that are killing kids instead. Now, interestingly enough, 34 people died in America last year from peanuts. Consuming peanuts actually killed them. In many cases, it caused pneumonia in their lungs. If peanut oil gets in your lungs, a piece of peanut lodges in your lungs, you're probably going to die of pneumonia. But if you smoke cannabis, to my knowledge, no one died from that last year. And no one died from that the year before. And no one died from that the year before or the year before. So if you go back all the way to 1937 and you do the math, you can see where this game of cops and robbers that was supposed to guarantee employment for 10,000 federal agents who were going to be furloughed because of the lifting of prohibition on alcohol consumption in the United States, to save those 10,000 jobs. Think of the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives that have been ruined by a lie told to Congress by a white supremacist racist who needed to employ 10,000 Tommy gun certified revenue agents. Well, it's kind of an extreme measure given everything that we now know about cannabis and the value of cannabinoid oils in modern medicine. The results in post-traumatic stress disorder of returning veterans who are allowed to use cannabis legally in studies indicates that it's probably the highest percentage of cure for PTSD of any methodology that's ever been applied. And especially interestingly enough, if it's done in conjunction with the learning of transcendental meditation, a form of meditation that I've practiced ever since college. The Beatles learned it from Maharishi, and it became very popular. In fact, there's a Maharishi International University in Iowa where you can study the medical effects of transcendental meditation on the body and, learn to practice transcendental meditation as a lifetime practice. I find it still very valuable all these years later. It takes me to a place of great peace and creativity in 15 minutes a day, twice a day. It's also been very good to me in the process of allowing me to deal with some issues that I've had growing up as a kid, being an angry young man, and learning to channel anger more and more lately. You'll notice that I'm sitting in front of a very large basketball. It's much bigger than my head, as you can see, and it contains the signatures of the entire #1 rated Wildcat team. So my congratulations to Sean Miller and the team for your #1 rating. Watched you beat Southern University yesterday in quite a good game. Been very impressed with sports at the University of Arizona. Since I went there, my last year at the U of A was 1976. Yeah, that was a while ago. So, today also I want to say a real special shout out to Patsy Navarrete, a woman with a great smile and a really, really great laugh, a Green Bay Packer fan to the end, who passed away. Happy trails, Patsy. We'll see you again someday. Who knows when? Who knows where? So, at this particular time, as we're approaching the holiday season, Hanukkah has come and gone, and the Christmas season is upon us. And I'm looking forward to spending some time with my granddaughter and my kids. They'll be here for Christmas, and that should be a lot of fun. I'm also hoping that this is the last year that I have to continue to struggle in Mexico for the rights to property that I bought years ago that I've never been able to use or take advantage of ownership of. So I'm looking forward to 2014. Rontime, the television show, is scheduled all the way through the end of December. So I will be taping once a month, Rontime show, for you to invite into your viewing space and share some time with me. I really appreciate the feedback that I've gotten from people concerning the show and the issues that I've raised. I do hope that I can provide some solutions to many of the questions that I've asked and not just be some kind of a noisy guy on TV making a racket and not providing any kind of answers for the questions I raise. Recently, the President of the United States was supposed to have another Google chat online. And when they ask you to submit questions for this chat for him to answer, the majority of the questions were, believe it or not, about the legalization of cannabis in the United States. And yet the president once again sidestepped the issue and did not answer any questions at all concerning cannabis or the war on drugs. So, and I see where the Supreme Court actually refused to take up a case involving the classification of cannabis and the fact that the Congress illegally classified cannabis a Class 1 narcotic in hearings where no evidence was allowed to be presented by the doctors from the American Medical Association who were there to set the record straight. I do believe that a Truth and Reconciliation Council would be an ideal solution to the problems that have been created by the war on drugs. There are approximately 850,000 young black men in prison or in jail at this time because of cannabis laws. And if you look back into history, there were only 385,000 black slaves brought from Africa to America. So by creating a system of mandatory sentences and by taking away the discretion of sentencing from the individual judge in the case, what we've ended up with in America is a for-profit prison system that resembles a 21st century slavery operation, because 4 out of 5 prisoners are persons of color. And I thought, wow, here we have a black president in the White House for the first time in the United States. He has taken a lot of his inspiration and courage from the first black president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, and yet he still continues to perpetuate a federal system of incarceration that 4 out of 5 prisoners are persons of color, and that the majority of those persons are in prison for a crime related to cannabis, a Class 1 narcotic more dangerous than cocaine or heroin, which are both Class 2. So, if this makes any sense to you, you must work for the federal government, the largest single consumer of fossil fuels on Earth, and one of the least efficient organizations on the planet Earth in terms of energy use, energy consumption, and delivery of product for cost involved. Congress, perfect example. Over the years since the Affordable Care Act was passed, 46 times the Senate Republicans have tried to repeal it, to bury it under a sidewalk, to disappear it, or as some of them said, to make it small enough to drown in a bathtub. So each one of those preparations of those votes cost like $600,000. And 46 times they've failed to repeal or change the Affordable Care Act because they don't have enough votes. And yet, Mr. Bonner and his colleagues feel that it's so important to do that they've failed to pass many other pieces of legislation that are so necessary at this time. We need infrastructure work. We need a revision of the law enforcement system in the United States and the prison system in the United States. We need a Truth and Reconciliation Council to actually right the wrongs that have been done by the federal government on behalf of the people of the United States. Since our elected officials are deadlocked in Washington and don't seem to be able to get much done, it appears as though it's time for a real change. So I'm hoping that 2014 is going to be the place where that change can take place. That place where place can be a place. Right. Third place. So I look forward to 2014 with you, all my friends, my family, and those of us who have lost loved ones lately. My sympathies to you all, and especially my sympathies to anyone who has lost someone to breast cancer, something that could have been treated with a natural, organic, non-invasive medicine. So, here we are, reaching the conclusion of Ron time again. It's been a great year. Thank you very much for your viewership, your feedback, and your friendships. I look forward to seeing you in January of next year. Have a nice day.